Kang Junho stood alone in the center of the Great Hall. Around him, delegates from 47 species sat in their elevated seats, looking down at him like judges watching a criminal. The hall was enormous, built from white stone and glowing crystal, designed to make anyone standing in the center feel small. Junho felt it. He had felt it for 30 years. The Galactic Council had existed for 10,000 years before humans ever reached the stars. When humanity finally joined, they were treated like children who had wandered into a room full of adults. The older species smiled at them, patted their heads, and gave them simple tasks. Guard this station. Fix that reactor. Fight in this war we do not wish to fight ourselves. And humans did it all. They did it because they believed that hard work would earn them respect. They believed that loyalty would be rewarded. They believed that one day, the council would see them as equals. Today was supposed to be that day. Junho looked up at High Arbiter Vel, the leader of the council. Vel was Torvani, a species of tall beings with silver skin and cold black eyes. The Torvani had ruled the council for 3,000 years. They did not like change. The vote is complete, Vel announced. His voice echoed through the hall like thunder. The petition for humanity to receive a permanent seat on this council has been rejected. 38 against. 9 in favor. Junho did not react. He had trained himself not to react. Behind him, he could hear Lee Salmon take a sharp breath. She was young, only 32, and she still believed that the galaxy could be fair. Junho had stopped believing that long ago. The council thanks humanity for its continued service, Vel continued. There was no warmth in his words. We encourage your species to continue contributing to the prosperity of all member worlds. Contributing. The word burned in Junho's chest. Humans had not simply contributed. They had bled. They had died. 40,000 human soldiers had fallen, defending the Makari border. Human engineers had built the power systems that kept half the council worlds running. Human doctors had stopped 3 separate plagues from destroying entire species. And still, they were not good enough. Delegate Oren of the Makari leaned forward in his seat. He was a heavy creature with rough gray skin and small, cruel eyes. The Makari had always hated humans. They saw them as competition, as threats, as animals that had somehow learned to walk upright. Perhaps, Oren said loudly, we should be more clear about why this vote failed. Humanity is a young species. Emotional. Unstable. Your lifespans are short, which makes you reckless. You do not think in centuries as we do. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the hall. Junho watched them nod at each other. These ancient species who had watched humanity struggle and bleed for 80 years. You are useful, Oren continued, his voice dripping with contempt. Very useful. Good soldiers. Good workers. Good servants. But servants do not sit at the high table. Servants do not make decisions. Servants do as they are told. Silence fell over the hall. Everyone waited to see how the human ambassador would respond. They expected anger. They expected pleading. They expected the emotional outburst that they believed all humans were prone to. Junho gave them none of it. He simply bowed. It was a slow, formal bow. The kind given to respected elders. But there was something in it that made several delegates shift uncomfortably in their seats. It was too calm. Too controlled. I thank the council for clarifying humanity's position, Junho said. His voice was quiet, but it carried to every corner of the hall. We understand now exactly where we stand. He turned and walked toward the exit. His footsteps echoed in the silence. No one spoke. No one tried to stop him. Salmon hurried to catch up with him in the corridor outside. Her face was red with anger. Her hands shaking. Ambassador, we cannot accept this, she said. We have to fight. We have to make them see. See what? Junho asked. He did not slow down. We have shown them everything for 80 years. They have seen our courage, our loyalty, our sacrifice. They simply do not care. Then what do we do? Junho stopped walking. They had reached a wide window that looked out into space. In the distance, Junho could see the lights of human ships, waiting faithfully to escort him home, ships crewed by young men and women who believed their service mattered. He had to tell them the truth now. "We leave," Junho said. Salmon stared at him. "Leave? Leave and go where?" "Home. All of us. Everywhere." "Ambassador, you cannot mean—" "I mean exactly what I say." Junho turned to face her. His eyes were tired, but his voice was steady. "Every human soldier guarding Council borders. Every engineer maintaining Council systems. Every doctor healing Council citizens. Every trader, every worker, every person who has given their life to serving an alliance that sees us as tools. They all come home." Salmon was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. "The Council will collapse. Perhaps. Millions could die. Perhaps. They will hate us." Junho looked back out the window. A human patrol ship was passing by, its lights blinking in the darkness. Somewhere on that ship, young humans were working hard, believing their work mattered. "They already hate us," Junho said. "They simply find us useful. There is a difference." He paused. "I will not ask our people to serve those who despise them. Not anymore." He reached for his communication device and opened a channel to Admiral Park Minho. The Admiral's face appeared on the screen, serious and waiting. "Admiral," Junho said, "send the order. All humans are to return to Earth space immediately. No exceptions. No delays." The Admiral did not hesitate. "Understood, Ambassador." "And the Council?" Junho thought about Vel's cold eyes. He thought about Oren's sneering voice. He thought about 80 years of humanity giving everything and receiving nothing. "Tell them nothing," he said. "Let them discover it for themselves." He ended the call and stood in silence with Salmon. Outside the window, the first human ships were already beginning to move, turning away from Council space, heading home. There were no speeches, no protests, no angry declarations. Humanity simply left, and the galaxy would never be the same. The order spread across the galaxy like ripples in still water. No announcements were made. No explanations were given. Humans simply began to pack their things and leave. On Station Kelvari, the largest waypoint in the Western Quadrant, Chief Engineer Yoon Hana watched her team work in silence. They moved quickly and efficiently, disconnecting equipment, securing data files, and preparing the reactors for shutdown. They had built this station with their own hands 30 years ago, when the Ilari begged for help after their old station was destroyed in a war. Now they were leaving it behind. An Ilari worker named Masa approached Hana carefully. He was young, barely past his first century, with the pale blue skin and wide eyes of his species. He had worked beside humans his entire adult life. "Engineer Hana," he said softly. Hana looked at him. She had known Masa for 15 years. She had taught him how to maintain the cooling systems. She had celebrated with him when his first child was born. "We are going home, Masa," she said. Her voice was kind but firm. "But this is your home. You built this place." Hana shook her head slowly. "We built it for the Council. The Council has made it clear that we are not welcome as equals. So we are leaving." Masa's eyes widened with fear. "But who will maintain the reactors? Who will fix the life support systems? Who will? The Council will find someone." Hana placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "I am sorry, Masa. Truly. But we cannot stay where we are not wanted." Across the station, similar scenes played out. Human doctors handed over patient files to confused alien staff. Human security officers removed their uniforms and returned their weapons. Human teachers said goodbye to their students. Human traders canceled contracts and closed their shops. There was no anger in their actions. No shouting, no accusations, no demands. Just a quiet, steady withdrawal, like a tide going out. Counselor Thyra of the Ilari arrived on Station Kelvari 3 days after the departure began. She was one of the 9 delegates who had voted in favor of humanity's petition. She had fought for them in the council chambers, when no one else would. Now she ran through the corridors, searching for someone, anyone, who could explain what was happening. She found Hana in the main engineering bay, overseeing the final shutdown procedures. "Engineer Hana, please," Thyra said, breathing hard. "You must tell me what is going on. Reports are coming in from everywhere. Humans are leaving every station, every colony, every outpost. The entire western border is losing its garrison. The medical centers on Torvani Prime are closing." "We are going home," Hana said simply. "But why? What has happened?" Hana stopped what she was doing and turned to face the counselor. "You were there, counselor. You heard what Delegate Oren said. You heard what the High Arbiter decided. That was politics. Foolish words from foolish beings. You cannot. We can." Hana's voice was quiet but unshakable. "We have given the Council 80 years of service. We have asked for nothing but respect. We were denied. So we are leaving." Thyra grabbed Hana's arm desperately. "But the Council needs you. Without human engineers, half our systems will fail within months. Without human soldiers, the borders will fall. Without human doctors, then the Council should have thought about that before calling us servants." Hana gently removed Thyra's hand from her arm. Behind her, the last human workers filed past, carrying their belongings toward the docking bays. "I have always liked you, Counselor," Hana said. "You were kind to us when others were not. But kindness from one person cannot undo cruelty from an entire galaxy. We are tired. We are done." She walked away, leaving Thyra standing alone in the empty engineering bay. Far across the galaxy, Admiral Park Minho stood on the bridge of the colony ship Horizon's Edge. The massive vessel was designed to carry 50,000 people across the stars. Now it was part of a fleet of hundreds, all moving in the same direction, toward Earth, toward home. Minho watched the reports coming in from across Council space. Everywhere, humans were departing peacefully. There had been no incidents, no violence, no sabotage. They left the systems they had built in working order. They handed over documentation and instructions. They trained replacements where they could. They were professional to the end, because that was who they were. His second-in-command, Commander Go Yuna, approached with a communication tablet. "Admiral, we have received 17 requests for clarification from Council authorities. They want to know why humans are leaving their posts." Minho did not look at the tablet. "What does the ambassador say?" "He says to give them no explanation. Let them figure it out themselves." Minho nodded slowly. "Then that is what we do." Yuna hesitated. "Admiral, some of our people are confused. They have spent their entire lives serving the Council. They have friends among the other species. They want to know if we will ever return." Minho was quiet for a long moment. Through the bridge windows, he could see other human ships moving in formation. Thousands of lights against the darkness of space. "Tell them this," he said finally. "We are not leaving because we hate the Council. We are leaving because we love ourselves. We deserve better than what they have given us. And until they understand that, we have nothing more to say to them." The fleet moved on, steady and silent. Back on Council Station Prime, High Arbiter Vel received the first reports of the human withdrawal. He read them with a dismissive wave of his silver hand. "Let them go," he said to his advisors. "They are throwing a tantrum, like the children they are. They will return in a few weeks, begging for their positions back." Delegate Oren laughed from his seat nearby. "Humans cannot survive without us. They need our technology, our trade routes, our protection. This is a bluff, nothing more." The advisors nodded in agreement. The meeting continued. The Council discussed tax reforms and trade agreements and other matters of importance. No one noticed that the lights in the eastern wing had begun to flicker. The human maintenance crew had left the station that morning. No one noticed that the food shipments from the human-run agricultural stations had stopped arriving. No one noticed that the communication relays in the outer sectors had gone silent. One by one, the Council did not notice any of these things, but they would. Soon, 3 months after the humans left, the Torvani homeworld went dark. It happened on a cold morning in the capital city. The great power grid that supplied energy to 2 billion beings simply stopped working. Lights went out. Heating systems failed. Hospitals lost power. Transportation networks froze. For 3 days, the Torvani scrambled to understand what had happened. Their best engineers examined the power systems, the same systems that had worked perfectly for 50 years. They found nothing broken. Everything was in place. The designs were elegant and efficient. The problem was simple. The Torvani had never learned how the systems actually worked. Humans had built them. Humans had maintained them. Humans had upgraded them over the decades. And humans had never been asked to teach anyone else. Why would they be? They were always there. They were always willing to help. Until they were not. Emergency repairs took 2 weeks. 17,000 Torvani died from cold and lack of medical care. The High Arbiter declared a state of emergency, the first in 800 years. But the power failure was only the beginning. On the Makari border, raiders attacked Station Sentinel-7 without warning. This station had once been guarded by human marines, hard men and women who had spent years training for exactly this kind of assault. They knew every corridor, every defensive position, every trick. The Makari soldiers who replaced them did not. When the raiders came, the Makari forces panicked. They had never faced real combat. They had never been tested. Within 6 hours, the station fell. The raiders took everything they could carry and destroyed the rest. Delegate Oren, who had laughed at the humans and called them servants, received the news in his private chambers. His face went pale gray. Station Sentinel-7 had been worth more than some entire planets. Now, it was ruins. Trade routes that humans had once patrolled became death zones. Pirate attacks increased by 400% in the first 2 months. Cargo ships stopped traveling without armed escorts. And there were not enough armed escorts anymore. Prices for basic goods tripled, then tripled again. The translation software that allowed council species to communicate began to fail. It had been designed by human programmers who understood the subtle differences between 100 languages. Without their updates and maintenance, the software started making mistakes. Small mistakes at first, then larger ones. Diplomatic messages were misunderstood. Trade agreements were confused. Arguments broke out over nothing. Medical facilities across council space fell into chaos. Human doctors had created treatment plans for diseases that other species had never encountered. Human researchers had developed medicines that no one else knew how to make. When the supplies ran out, people began to die. High Arbiter Vel called an emergency session of the council. The great hall that had once been filled with pride and arrogance now felt cold and empty. Counselor Thyra stood before the assembled delegates. She had spent 3 months gathering data, traveling to affected worlds, documenting the collapse. Her report was devastating. Humanity represented less than 3% of the council population, she began, her voice heavy with exhaustion. But they were embedded in every critical system we have. Power generation, military defense, medical care, trade, transportation, communication. They did the work that no one else wanted to do. They went to the dangerous places. They solved the problems that others could not solve. She paused, looking around at the silent delegates. They were not servants. They were the bones of this council, and we told them they did not matter. Delegate Oren stood up angrily. This is absurd. We cannot allow one minor species to hold us hostage. Send a message to the humans. Demand that they return to their posts immediately. Remind them of their obligations under council law. Thyra shook her head. What obligations? They fulfilled every contract. They completed every assignment. They left everything in working order and provided documentation for their replacements. They broke no laws. They simply left. Then make new laws. Order them back. With what authority? Thyra asked quietly. We have no ships on their borders. We have no leverage. We have nothing they want. The hall fell silent. For the first time, the ancient species of the Galactic Council faced a problem they could not solve with words or threats. High Arbiter Vel spoke slowly. Send a message to Ambassador Kang. Inform him that the Council wishes to discuss the terms of humanity's return. We are prepared to offer incentives. The message was sent. It traveled across the stars to the new human capital, a world they had named Nova Sol. It reached Ambassador Junho in his office, where he sat with Lee Salmon, reviewing reports of human progress. Junho read the message carefully. Then he wrote a reply. It was one sentence. We wish the Council prosperity in its future endeavors. He sent it and returned to his work. On Council Station Prime, High Arbiter Vel received the reply. He read it 3 times, unable to believe what he was seeing. They refused, he said. His voice was hollow. They actually refused. Around him, advisors scrambled to find solutions. New engineers were recruited from other species. New soldiers were trained. New doctors were educated. But it was not enough. It was never enough. The humans had made everything look easy. They had worked without complaint, solved problems without fuss, and sacrificed without asking for recognition. The Council had assumed this meant the work was simple. They were wrong. In his chambers, Delegate Oren drank alone. His political allies had abandoned him. His species was losing trade contracts every day. His name had become a curse word on a dozen worlds. He thought about the human ambassador, standing calm and quiet in the Great Hall 3 months ago. He thought about how the human had bowed politely and walked away. At the time, Oren had seen it as weakness, a coward running away from a fight. Now he understood. It was not weakness. It was strength. The humans had known exactly what would happen. They had known the Council would fall apart without them, and they had walked away anyway, because they did not need the Council. The Council needed them, and now, perhaps, it was too late. 6 months after the departure, Counselor Thyra made a decision that could end her career. She took a small ship and flew alone into human space. The journey took 3 weeks. She had no invitation, no diplomatic clearance, no guarantee that she would be allowed to land. But she had to try. The Council was dying, and she was the only one willing to admit it. Human space was not what she expected. She had imagined suffering. She had imagined chaos. She had imagined desperate people struggling to survive without the Council's protection. Instead, she found peace. The first human world she encountered was a small colony called Sabiok. It was a young world, only 20 years old, but already it was thriving. Green fields stretched across fertile valleys. Clean cities rose from the plains. Children played in parks while their parents worked in shops and factories. There were no Council soldiers here, no Council bureaucrats, no Council laws, and yet, everything was in order. Thyra continued her journey to Nova Sol, the new human capital. As her ship approached the planet, she saw a sight that took her breath away. The world was beautiful. Vast oceans reflected the light of 2 suns. Mountain ranges rose like ancient guardians. Cities sparkled with light and life, and above the planet, a fleet of human ships patrolled in perfect formation. Not the worn-out vessels that had once served the Council, but new ships, built with human hands and human minds. They were sleek and powerful and proud. Her communication system crackled. Ilari vessel, you have entered human space. State your purpose. Thyra swallowed hard. This is Counselor Thyra of the Galactic Council. I am here to speak with Ambassador Kang Junho. Please. I come in peace. There was a long pause. Then a different voice came through. Calm and measured. Counselor Thyra. This is Admiral Park Minho. You are cleared to land at the diplomatic station. The ambassador will meet with you. She landed on a platform overlooking a great city. The air was clean and warm. Flowers bloomed in gardens along the walkways. Humans walked past, talking and laughing, paying her little attention. They did not look like a conquered people. They did not look like refugees. They looked happy. Ambassador Junho met her in a simple meeting room. He looked older than she remembered, with gray in his hair and lines around his eyes. But his voice was still quiet and strong. Counselor, he said politely. I did not expect to see you here. Ambassador, please forgive my intrusion. I had to come. I had to see for myself. Junho gestured for her to sit. And what have you seen? Thyra spread her hands helplessly. I have seen your people thriving. I have seen you building, growing, creating. I thought, without the council, you would struggle. Many believed that. Junho poured 2 cups of tea and offered her one. They were wrong. The council did not support us. We supported the council. Without us, the burden has finally fallen where it belongs. The burden is crushing us, Thyra admitted. Ambassador, I am here to beg. The council is dying. We need your help. Please, come back. Junho was quiet for a moment. He sipped his tea and looked out the window at the city below. What are you offering? He asked finally. Everything. Thyra leaned forward desperately. A permanent seat on the council. Full voting rights. Reparations for your losses. An official apology for the treatment you received. Whatever you want, we will give. Junho nodded slowly. Then he stood and walked to the door. Come with me, he said. There is something I want to show you. He led her through the streets of the capital, past busy markets and quiet parks, past schools and hospitals and temples. Everywhere she looked, Thyra saw humans living their lives in peace. And not just humans. She saw other species too. Small groups of beings she recognized from the outer edges of council space. Species who had been ignored and mistreated. Just like the humans, they were walking together, working together, living together. Junho stopped in front of a tall wall of polished black stone. Names were carved into it, thousands and thousands of names, stretching from one end to the other. This is the memorial wall, Junho said softly. Every name you see here belongs to a human who died, serving the council over the last 80 years. Thyra stared at the names. There were so many she could not see where they ended. Soldiers who died defending borders that were not their own. Doctors who died treating diseases they could have avoided. Engineers who died building stations on dangerous worlds. All of them gave everything, and in return, they were called servants. Junho turned to face her. His eyes were not angry. They were sad. We gave you our best, counselor, our brightest minds, our bravest soldiers, our most compassionate healers. And you told us we were not good enough to sit at your table. Thyra felt tears forming in her eyes. Ambassador, I voted for you. I fought for you. Please, do not punish all of us for the cruelty of some. We are not punishing anyone. Lee Salmon appeared beside them, her expression calm but firm. We are simply choosing ourselves for the first time. The council did not want partners. They wanted tools. Tools do not get seats at the table. Then what must we do? Thyra asked. How can we earn your trust again? Junho looked at her for a long moment. She could see him thinking, weighing, deciding. Perhaps, in time, he said finally, when both our peoples have changed. When the council learns to see others as equals, not as servants. When you can look at a human and see a person, not a resource. How long will that take? As long as it takes. Junho placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. You are a good person, counselor. One of the few who treated us with kindness. But kindness from one person cannot undo cruelty from a galaxy. The council must change. Not because they need us, but because it is right. Until then, we have nothing to discuss. He guided her back to her ship. As she prepared to leave, she looked back at him one last time. What if we change? She asked. What if we become better? Junho smiled sadly. Then come back, and we will talk. Thyra flew home with no treaty, no agreement, no solution. But for the first time, she understood. Humanity had not left because they hated the council. They had left because they finally loved themselves enough to demand what they deserved. Respect. 2 years had passed since the humans left. The galaxy had changed in ways no one could have predicted. The Galactic Council still existed, but it was a shadow of what it had once been. 3 species had withdrawn completely, tired of paying for a system that no longer worked. Border wars raged across the outer territories. The economy had shrunk by nearly half. Millions had died from preventable diseases, failed systems, and endless conflicts. High Arbiter Vel had been removed from power 8 months ago. He lived now in quiet exile on a distant moon, surrounded by servants who whispered about his failures when they thought he could not hear. He could hear. He simply no longer cared. Delegate Oren faced criminal charges for his role in the crisis. His famous speech, the one where he called humans servants, was played at his trial. He sat in silence as witness after witness described the consequences of his arrogance. 17,000 dead on Torvani Prime. Station, Sentinel, 7, destroyed. Trade routes collapsed. Lives ruined. He was found guilty. He was sent to a prison world. He was forgotten. The new leader of the council was Counselor Thyra. She had fought against the old ways for years. Now, finally, she had the power to change things, but change was slow and painful, and many did not want to change at all. Meanwhile, humanity had built something new. It was called the Terran Alliance, and it was not like the Council at all. There were no high seats looking down on lower species. There were no tests of worthiness. There was only a simple agreement: treat each other as equals, or leave. 4 species had joined the Alliance in its first year. They were small nations, from the edges of Council space. Beings who had been ignored and mistreated for centuries. The Vora, with their gentle ways and brilliant art. The Kasani, master builders who had been forced to work without recognition. The Ilmari, ancient philosophers who had been mocked for their peaceful beliefs. The Rin, warriors who had been sent to die in wars that were not their own. Together with humanity, they created something beautiful. Admiral Park Minho commanded the Alliance fleet. His ships were newer and stronger than anything the Council had built in a century. They patrolled Alliance space not as conquerors, but as protectors. Every captain, every crew member, knew why they served. Not for glory, not for power. For the simple right to live in peace. Engineer Yoon Hana designed the new stations that connected Alliance worlds. They were different from Council stations. They had parks and gardens and spaces for children to play. They were built for life, not just for function. Every species that visited them felt welcome, and Ambassador Kang Junho, now gray-haired and slower than before, continued to do the work he had always done. He met with delegations from Council species who wanted to join the Alliance. He listened to their requests. He asked them questions, always the same question. Are you here because you respect us? Or because you need us? Some were honest. They admitted they needed help. They admitted they were desperate. They admitted they had been wrong. Junho welcomed them. He gave them aid. He offered them friendship. And slowly, carefully, he showed them what respect really looked like. Others were not honest. They came with demands and threats. They spoke of obligations and debts. They tried to negotiate from positions of power they no longer held. Junho listened politely. Then he showed them the door. One afternoon, Junho stood on the observation deck of Nexus Station. It had once been the greatest council station in the galaxy, the symbol of their power and authority. Now it belonged to the Alliance, purchased from the bankrupt council for a fraction of its true value. Lee Salmon stood beside him, watching ships from a dozen species dock peacefully in the vast bay below. Do you ever regret it? She asked quietly. Leaving, I mean. Junho thought about the question. He thought about the 80 years humanity had spent serving the council. He thought about the names on the memorial wall. He thought about the young humans who had died believing their sacrifice mattered. I regret that we had to leave, he said finally. I regret that it was necessary, but I do not regret what we have built. Below them, a group of children was playing in the station gardens. Human children, and Vora children, and Kasani children. All running and laughing together. They did not see species or boundaries. They only saw friends. They are the future, Salmon said softly. They will never know what it was like before. That is the point. Junho smiled. The first real smile he had felt in years. We build so that they do not have to suffer as we did. We remember so that they can forget. In 40. A communication device chirped in his pocket. He looked at it and saw a message from Counselor Thyra. She was requesting a formal meeting to discuss closer ties between the Council and the Alliance. Junho read the message carefully. Thyra had worked hard to change the Council. She had faced opposition and threats and sabotage, but she had not given up. Slowly, painfully, she was making progress. Perhaps, he thought, it was time. He wrote a reply, inviting her to visit Nexus Station. Not for negotiations, not for treaties, just to talk. To see what the Alliance had become, to understand what was possible when beings treated each other as equals. He sent the message and put the device away. What did she want? Salmon asked. A meeting. And you agreed? Junho nodded slowly. The galaxy is changing, Salmon. The old ways are dying. Something new is being born. We can hide from it, or we can help shape it. He turned to look at her, his old eyes bright with hope. We did not leave to destroy the Council. We left to save ourselves. But perhaps, now that we are strong, we can help others find the same strength. Not by serving them, not by sacrificing for them, but by showing them a better way. Salmon considered his words. Then she smiled. You always were an optimist, Ambassador. Not always. Junho looked back at the children playing in the gardens. But I am learning. The stars turned slowly outside the great windows. Ships came and went, carrying beings from a dozen worlds, all living together in peace. The old order was crumbling. A new one was rising, and humanity, finally, was home. Not because they had nowhere else to go, but because they had built a place where they truly belonged. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is walk away and let them realize what they have lost.